Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the greatest success stories in the history of life on Earth, the rise of the dinosaurs. But here's the thing, the story we all think we know might be completely wrong. So get ready, because we're about to flip this tale on its head. You know the classic story, right? Dinosaurs were just better. They were these evolutionary marvels, bigger, stronger, faster. They were basically destined to rule the world, outcompeting all their rivals to dominate the planet for millions of years. It's the ultimate story of survival of the fittest. But what if that's not how it happened at all? What if their incredible, long-lasting reign wasn't because they were superior? What if it was all down to a cosmic roll of the dice? This whole explainer is based on some fascinating research from the journal Science, and it tells a very, very different story. Okay, so to get this, we've got to go way back. We're talking about the late Triassic period, somewhere between 230 and 200 million years ago. Now, dinosaurs were around back then, sure, but they were hardly the stars of the show. Not even close. They were just one group of animals among many other, arguably more impressive players. And check this out. This slide really lays out the competitive landscape. On one side, you have the early dinosaurs, and on the other, you've got their main rivals, a group called the Cruotarsans. And just look at the stats. The Cruotarsans had way more diverse body plans, they were often more numerous, and they were doing a lot more jobs in the ecosystem. By pretty much every metric, they were the ones on top. So who were these forgotten rulers? Well, the Cruotarsans were the ancestors of modern crocodiles, and they were incredible. I mean, we're talking about huge armored plant eaters, bizarre long-snouted fish hunters, and giant land predators that would have given any early T-Rex a serious run for its money. These guys were a dynamic and diverse bunch, no question about it. Okay, so if this long-held idea of dinosaur superiority is actually true, we should be able to see it in the fossil record, right? The data should show dinosaurs evolving faster or being more varied than the Cruotarsans during those 30 million years they lived together. So let's put that idea on trial. First up, let's look at their evolutionary rate. You can think of this as their evolutionary speedometer. It's a measure of how quickly a group is changing its anatomy, trying out new features, and adapting. You'd expect the superior group to be evolving faster, right? Well, here's our first big surprise. When scientists actually measured this, they found no real difference. The dinosaurs were not innovating any faster than their rivals. On this count, it's a total tie, a dead heat. So much for that idea. Okay, on to the next test, morphological disparity. Now, that's just a fancy science term for asking who had more variety, who was experimenting with more different body shapes and sizes, filling all the different roles in the ecosystem. And boom, here's the second shocker. The Cruotarsans win this one, and it is not even close. They were exploring way more of what's called morphospace. All that means is they had a much, much greater variety of body plans than the dinosaurs did back in the Triassic. They were the more creative, more experimental group. So what this all boils down to is pretty stunning. For 30 million years, these two groups lived side by side, and there's just no evidence in the fossil record that dinosaurs were outcompeting anybody. In fact, if you had to bet on a winner back then, you probably would have put your money on the Cruotarsans. So if the dinosaurs didn't win this long, drawn-out evolutionary war, how in the world did they end up ruling the planet for the next 135 million years? Well, the answer wasn't found in competition, it was found in catastrophe. Just let that number sink in. For 30 million years, these two great dynasties were basically locked in an evolutionary stalemate. Neither group could get a real upper hand. The world was big enough for both of them. And this timeline shows us exactly when things changed. It all comes down to that one moment at 200 million years ago, the TJEE, the Triassic-Jurassic Extinction Event. That is the moment that changed the course of history on this planet. Yeah, this wasn't some gradual takeover. This was a sudden, violent, global catastrophe. Think massive volcanic eruptions, runaway climate change. The rules of survival were completely rewritten, basically overnight. And when the dust finally settled, the world was a totally different place. The diverse, dominant, and successful Cruotarsans pretty much all gone, wiped off the map. But for reasons we still don't fully understand, the dinosaurs, they made it through. And that leads us to this completely radical new way of looking at the dinosaurs' rise to power. It wasn't an empire earned through generations of competition. It was an empire built on the ashes of their fallen rivals. An empire built by chance. So the final verdict is in. Dinosaurs were not better. They didn't win some 30-million-year evolutionary arms race. Their success was a product of what scientists call historical contingency, which is really just a way of saying they were in the right place at the right time. Plain and simple, they got lucky. Think about that. Their entire 135-million-year reign wasn't an achievement they earned. It was a consequence. They inherited the Earth. They didn't conquer it. They just happened to be the ones left standing after the game board was catastrophically cleared of all their major competitors. And this gets at a much deeper truth about how evolution actually works. As this quote gets at, mass extinctions are different. They don't play by the normal rules of survival of the fittest. Sometimes, in the face of global disaster, survival isn't about being the best. It's just about being lucky. Which leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about, doesn't it? The story of the dinosaurs forces us to reconsider what success even means. It suggests that sometimes the biggest winners aren't the strongest or the smartest. They're just the ones who manage to hang on when the world changes overnight. So how much of any great success story is truly earned, and how much is just about being the lucky one left standing?